I am here with Stuart Broadley, who's the Chief Executive of the Energy Industries Council. And we are now in the run-up to your annual fabulous energy exports events coming up in Aberdeen, 2nd and 3rd September. Welcome, Stuart. It's always a pleasure to see you. We will get you singing maybe towards the end of this podcast. But first, tell us a little bit about...
I told you about the singing thing, but that doesn't mean to say, maybe.
Maybe.
Let's see whether I get a sold-out Energy Exports conference. Then I'll sing live on stage.
We're going to hold you to that. Okay, you heard it here first, everyone. Yeah. But first, tell us a little bit about what we can expect to see at Energy Exports.
Erikka, lovely to see you again. Thanks for your support again for Energy Exports Conference. The Energy Exports Conference is my favourite EIC event. If I'm allowed to say that, I have a favourite.
Ooh, is it your favourite?
It's my favourite event.
Okay, fair enough.
And the reason is because of its origin. So we have this. So I've been CEO for 10 years now at EIC. Can you believe it? And I still love it. It's such a great place to work. Yeah. And it's because we work with companies all around the world, getting insights on what strategies they use to grow. And we do this thing called Survive and Thrive, which is research just with our members on exactly that. What strategies do they use to grow in challenging markets, which unfortunately
There's been a few challenging markets, that's for sure. Yeah.
And every year for the last 10 years, there's a little sneak preview of the results of the 10th edition of Survive and Thrive, which will be published later in July this year, 2026.
Looking forward to that.
Is unfortunately, again, the least used growth strategy is the development of new export markets. It doesn't matter where you are in the world, developing a new export market remains the hardest, most expensive, kind of like the last thing you do to grow. You try everything else first, to innovate, to diversify, to maybe now go digital. If it's like, nothing else is working, okay. Let's open up a new market.
Yeah. Is that just because export markets are, kind of like a bird in a bush rather than the bird in the hand? Or is it become more difficult in recent, we have, the Straits of Hormuz, we have war in the Middle East. Is it just because it's more challenging now?
It's been the same for 10 years. So I don't think it's anything to do with a short-term geopolitical issue. It's just the simple fact that if you're trying to grow an export market for the first time, it takes time, maybe 2 to 3 to 4 years before you get profits from that decision. You've got to hire people that you don't know. You've got to find partners normally that you don't know. Yeah. Then there's the legal risk. There's the payment risk. It's just a lot of issues that companies are like, I need to have a lot of money in the bank, and maybe I'll have 2 or 3 sort of, like investigations into new markets, but I need other more profitable business first. So they're trying to get those short-term, as you say, bird in the hand opportunities first. And it is true that there are faster ways to grow. But the truth is, the best companies in the world, those that have the highest revenues, the highest revenue growth, the highest profits, pay their people best, the ones that last longest are global businesses businesses that are exporting businesses. Businesses that are largely domestic are the ones that typically have, unfortunately, the least chance of long-term survival. So I guess that's why Energy Exports Conference still really matters. But it is true that the world is changing, isn't it? And that's why this year the Energy Exports Conference has a different theme. So it is all about international trade and opportunities from that, which we will bring, as ever, those project opportunities to the Energy Exports Conference in Aberdeen, 2nd and 3rd of September.
Coming right up.
P&J Live. But it'll be in the theme of In the Changing World, which is driven basically by this need for energy security. So different countries define energy security in different ways. But in the end, it is about, how do we make sure in the UK we're in more control of our energy resources, power, fuel, and resources, supply chains. But it also is then, if we're going to import or if we're going to export, choosing our friends, choosing the partners around the world that we trust. And for those other countries around the world, it matters to them equally. And Dr. Sultan, for instance, who is Dr. Sultan Al-Jaber, who's the CEO of ADNOC and the host of ADIPEC, which is also an event we're very close to.
Right.
He said very recently at a presentation he did at the Atlantic Council, exactly that point. He said, as he's preparing for ADIPEC, which I think is going to be an incredible event as well.
Indeed.
That's not an EIC show, but we run the UK Pavilion there. Yeah. And it's our biggest UK Pavilion. So if I make a little plug for that as well here, which is we've got 127 companies last year in the UK Pavilion. We've got more space this year. We've only got a little bit left though, but I think it's going to be an incredible event because as we all know, now with this, let's hope, ongoing ceasefire and MOU for a peace deal in the region between the US and Iran. I think now the opportunities, but also the sort of strategic approach that the Middle East takes towards who it partners with. And as Dr. Soltan said, he judges companies and countries now based upon how they responded during their period of conflict. And that's what he said at the Atlantic Council.
Oh, wow.
So it's a case of, okay, know who your friends are and stay close to them. And if people are not your friends, then find new friends. And that's a kind of trading imperative now that wasn't there in previous years. I think all of us in the industry know, right, that it's hard to build up trust and it's very easy to lose it. And when it's lost, then it's very hard to rebuild it again. That's what's happened in the Middle East over the last 4 months.
Wow.
And so now EEC will be a place where we're going to go into that topic, and we're going to bring companies representing those countries that are now, they're either doing things around the Great Bypass. The Great Bypass is this idea which is, countries in the Gulf now realize that they can't just rely upon the Strait of Hormuz. That will now hopefully again be a passage.
This is changing dynamics, I guess.
They need alternative routes now. Whether it's pipelines or whether it's new canals or whatever it is, road systems. And there's new ports being developed. So we'll kind of spotlight all those issues, but we've also got new markets that are developing as an alternative to the Gulf, whether it's North Africa, so all the countries along that, or Eastern Mediterranean. Then you've also got markets, of course, like the US, Venezuela, Canada, and Sub-Saharan Africa. All those markets regard themselves now as an alternative source of oil and gas to the Middle East. So you've got all of these changes that have happened really because of this recent conflict, and we're going to spotlight all this at the Energy Exports Conference.
Okay. Well, it kind of sounds like Exports Conference will offer the supply chain the benefits of this insight and some real connections. But as you say, it might also be a great stepping stone to ADIPEC, where isn't it wonderful that, it kind of feels like it's going ahead. I think, when, the breakout of issues in the Middle East was taking place, there was a question mark over whether, kind of companies could go into a trouble area, but that seems to have been sorted now, hopefully.
Well, so to be specific about that, the issue was that Europe and the UK and some other regions of the world had basically travel advisories, saying, not advising to travel to the Middle East during those first 3 months of the conflict. Those travel advisories have now been lifted. Right. So that means you can travel. You could have traveled before, but with a travel advisory, you can't get insurance. So now with those advisories lifted, people can travel, free to travel, and they will be able to get insurance. So that means
ADIPEC is go.
ADIPEC is absolutely go. And therefore, so EEC will very much be, a kind of a place to start looking at the Middle East as a market that maybe companies were starting to question because of this conflict. And now, of course, it's probably going to be a market like no other in the world for the next 5 years, because not only are these rebuild projects there and these alternative routes to, getting the commodities out of the region, but they're also going to be building hugely in all technologies. Right. Because in the Middle East, they believe, even though you might think they're a bunch of petrostates, they are petrostates that are heavily diversifying. So they're all working on nuclear projects or on renewable projects or on, e-fuel and SAF projects. So there's opportunities everywhere you look there right now, as well as the reconstruction of the damaged facilities, as well as the Great Bypass. Oh, it's quite an incredible market there. And I think, so EEC will be one of those first events where you can start to now understand how do you access those brand new projects. Most of them have not been announced by the Middle East operators yet. So EEC will be a kind of a
lifting the lid.
The other thing I want to say about Energy Exports Conference, of course, is it's not just about bringing these amazing projects and showcasing the opportunities around the world. And it's not just the Middle East. We'll be showcasing opportunities all over the world at EEC. But also we showcase the amazing British energy supply chain companies, of which we know from EIC database, EIC Supply Map, that there are 3,800 companies in the UK energy supply chain who have more than £1 million of revenue. So we actually track about 12,000 companies in the UK energy supply chain, but the ones we really track in terms of knowing exactly their capabilities, the sectors they're in, how they're progressing, is the ones above the £1 million. So that's 3,800.
Yeah.
And we always aim to get 1,000 of those 3,800 to Energy Exports Conference, which we've achieved pretty much consistently over the last, say, 4 or 5 times we've run Energy Exports Conference. So it is for operators around the world, but also in the UK, who are thinking, okay, how do I find out more about what the UK supply chain is thinking about in terms of how they're going to invest, what sectors they want to participate in. Energy Exports Conference is a great place to meet the supply chain too.
Now, EIC is incomparable in its, support and membership, which is the supply chain. Like, you guys are supply chain through and through. If you were rock, you'd have supply chain, kind of right through the middle of it. So that's really interesting. I hadn't, kind of been cognizant about, the count, about 3,000 of these companies of scale in the supply chain, and how you're working with them.
And, 3,800. Huh. We have about 500 of those 3,800 in the UK. So we're about 1,000 members, just under 1,000 members globally, and 500 of those in the UK.
But of those that you track, we've seen difficulties in the UK supply chain. We've rehearsed those previously in our many chats. Has that increased or decreased at all, just with mergers, acquisitions, company failures?
Right. So it's true to say that, so again, I'll give you a sneak peek of the findings of the Survive and Thrive.
Survive and Thrive. Right. Okay.
Although I can't give you everything, because obviously we need to
we have to wait
give it its own
for
space,
that
and
big
you have
debut.
to wait.
Absolutely.
But the truth is that of those 3,800 companies, 80% of them are heavily reliant on the oil and gas industry. So it's a very integrated supply chain, right? It's not like we have a separate renewable supply chain, nuclear supply chain, oil and gas supply chain, basically very integrated. And the heartland of that, the heritage to that, is oil and gas. And most of those 80% are still largely, from a revenue point of view, reliant on oil and gas. So you're asking the question, well, how can it be then that if the UK oil and gas industry is clearly struggling, because we have, a kind of policies that clearly prefer renewables right now in the UK and don't really encourage oil and gas development, which is what it is right now. We have to accept that right now. So how can it then be that oil and gas companies are still able to do oil and gas work? And of course, the answer is that they are exporting all over the world. Yeah. So then you say, well, how can it be that the least used growth strategy is development of new exports? Well, it's because oil and gas has been and continues to be in traditional export markets. So the supply chain in the UK has been very strong for 50 or 60 years and developed most of those export markets in places like Brazil and Houston, and of course in the Middle East, particularly in UAE, and in places like Malaysia. All of those are primary petrostate oil and gas markets. And the British supply chain was one of those first sets of supply chains to invest heavily in those markets 30 years ago, when the market was strongly booming. Yeah. And there was a lot of money that enabled those companies to invest heavily in those oil and gas regions of the world. And there are hundreds of thousands of British people living with their families in those countries today, providing amazing export capabilities for our British supply chain still. But they're often doing it, if you like, in an international trade sense, a bit more broader than, if export is manufacturing in the UK and selling it to an overseas country, the oil and gas industry is much broader than that. Yes, we export a lot because we still have an amazing manufacturing and engineering capability here in the UK. But we actually also have a lot of service businesses around the world, that are all over the world, but particularly in those oil and gas businesses. So the answer is, we've got a very strong, actually still booming supply chain in the UK, strangely, yes. Because of the work they're doing overseas. And I think us as kind of the voice of the energy supply chain, what we would say is, we don't think that supply chain necessarily will die because of British policies. We think they will move because of British policies. Yeah. Because British policies assume that there will be so much renewable business that that will have all the jobs and opportunities and the same level of profits, and timing-wise and place-wise will be a perfect match to take, don't worry, oil and gas, all those people can move into renewables. And I think we would support that if that was really the case, if it was the same place and the right timing and the right type of jobs. Yeah. And I think there is this sort of argument to say the jobs in theory are transferable, but the timing and the place are wrong. So most of these renewable projects have just not come through fast enough. There aren't actually many jobs in them. There's a kind of a fundamental difference between oil and gas projects, and renewable projects. Renewable projects, there's a lot of upfront work that gets done to build the project, an offshore wind farm, say. But once it's operating, there aren't many jobs in it. Whereas in oil and gas, of course, there's a lot of work to build the project, and then a lot of people still maintaining.
Absolutely, yeah.
So they're pretty different sectors. So personally in the UK, those renewable projects are not coming fast enough to take the oil and gas jobs that we're definitely losing in terms of in the UK. Secondly, they are in a different place. So that does make a challenge for people that are kind of, living in one part of the UK. Will they move to another? We need the projects first, and then it'll be a problem of perhaps the place is wrong. But okay, that's less of an issue. I think if there are plenty of jobs and they're in the wrong place, then I'd be like, okay, we can talk to our supply chain about let's relocate you. Because of course they're moving to a different place, which is another country. So I think in the end, that's the truth, which is, and it's a bit of a difficult message to give, because what it then says is, UK policies around anti-oil and gas are very damaging for a place like Aberdeen.
Yes.
It's a place-based problem because there's just not much work here. And the taxi driver who I was in the car with, there's always a great, as you say, barometer.
100% barometer.
What the world is. Yeah. He's very, very unhappy with the level of business he's seeing right now. He's never been so quiet. He says there's just no one travelling right now. No one coming into Aberdeen. He's an airport taxi. No one coming into Aberdeen. No one leaving Aberdeen. What's happening? What's going on? But companies themselves are, heavily exporters, but to existing markets. So that's why they're not developing new markets. Back again to Energy Exports Conference, right? So we will, of course, not just be featuring some of the new markets. We'll be featuring all of the established oil and gas markets. So Energy Exports Conference is proudly an energy agnostic event. We don't believe our job is to say, here's the best market and we're against another market. Our job is to represent the energy markets as they are.
Yes.
Policymakers, of course, that's their job to take a view of what they're, and there are other activists and others that have a view. That's okay. But for us, our job is just to be energy agnostic and say these are the energy opportunities as they are.
Yeah.
We then bring a lot of information around data and evidence to say these are real opportunities, just not ones that you read in the press. So that's the kind of the final thing that we'll showcase a lot at Energy Exports Conference is the final investment decisions around these projects. So again, we won't be just saying these might happen.
Absolutely.
We'll be
when
saying,
you can expect
this market is a definite market. We've already got 4 projects, let's say, at FID, and 4 more we think will come to FID. Therefore, you should look at this market.
Indeed. One of the things, you're really hard to track down, Stuart. You're all around the globe. You've been in many of these markets. You are seeing, which is why I think EIC knows when these decisions are being made and when the money's going to be coming, because we know that FID is the difference between something on paper, which sounds good, and something which is actually offering contracts and jobs and income. But what are some of your favorite hotspots? Tell us a little bit about what's been most exciting for you in terms of the markets and the opportunities, of course, that will be.
That will be at Energy Exports Conference. But thank you for highlighting that. I am travelling, and it's not because I necessarily want to; it's because I have to. So don't take this wrong. But what I read in the media, what I'm seeing in social media, and I'm an avid podcast listener, and I love doing podcasts as well.
Absolutely, that's why you're here. We love having you.
And by the way, we are going to do for the first time a live stream podcast recording at Energy Exports Conference. Oh,
cool. Great.
So
we're in. Absolutely.
Anyway, but to answer your question, I am traveling a lot more because I'm struggling through what I see in the general reported media or social media. What's really happening isn't the same as what I'm seeing reported around the world. I don't really mean in the UK, but I mean around the world. And as a truly global energy trade association, I need to know that so that otherwise, it's like we all end up kind of being in our bubble and we'll all get quite negative in our UK bubble. And yes, Aberdeen is my home, London is my office. So you would say, perhaps I have a very strong view of what's right and wrong here, or what is happening here. But I need to have that same level of knowledge in all of the energy markets of the world. So yeah, it's true. I am traveling a lot right now because I need that level of knowledge. But it means then I can build networks and actual friendships with some of those key stakeholders that then our members then need to get to know. It means we can then start running events in those countries, again, so our members can then get to meet the decision makers. But it also means we then understand what's happening there so that we can then provide better insights to our members and broader stakeholders about what's really happening. and bring some of those companies then to Energy Exports Conference. So,
Great.
and I think it's kind of, if we look at, so, you know, the UK, what's happening here, I always try and think about the UK. I think about that in the context of what's happening then in other countries.
Yes. So, I mean, we were talking about how, things are feeling awfully gloomy, here in Aberdeen, kind of wider UK, depending on, particularly if you're reliant on oil and gas, as we say, the supply chain is, albeit, if you're maybe building out grids or project managing that kind of thing, you're feeling a bit better. But maybe, your experience of having established these relationships are important. Seeing, what other countries are, you say, defining energy security and what they're doing about it. Maybe, everyone's got challenges, and maybe UK isn't unique in that.
Depends absolutely where you are, right? So it's the same as net zero was always this idea of we're all trying to march in step to a 2050 net zero target.
Yeah.
But every country's got a different starting position, and in the end, probably now will have a different ending position.
Yeah. Okay.
Because of their unique challenges, resources, how much money they have, what their policies are, changing governments, and so on. So, and I think now, of course, geopolitics is having this huge influence on what countries are doing to try and raise money and focus how they then spend that money. So, yeah, I try and think about the UK in the context of some other countries. So, okay, let's pick maybe a few. And just explore them, and then you can sort of compare and contrast. So, define UK, you would say we have high energy costs, some of the highest in the world. Unfortunately, that is true.
Yes.
Particularly electricity costs. So it's our electricity costs that are higher.
See.
So 125% higher than the normal average European country in the UK. Why are we more than double the electricity costs? So not energy or gas costs per se, because there are gas costs that are high across the whole of Europe. In fact, our average gas costs in the UK are lower than in Europe.
Yeah.
This is interesting, right?
It really is interesting.
Yeah.
I know.
We talk about gas a lot here, but Europe is much more reliant on gas than the UK, and of course much more exposed to heavy reliance on expensive energy imports in the UK, because the UK still has some domestic production, which keeps the net cost down a bit.
Right.
So, okay, you think, well, that's not what we're hearing.
Indeed,
right?
indeed.
Whereas electricity costs that are much higher. And in fact, there's an article in the July edition of the Energy Voice Energy Supplement.
Absolutely.
Which
Looking
talks about
costs.
that. So definitely energy cost is a major issue in the UK, and the facts are important to understand why that is. We're also, of course, a net energy importer in the UK. So about 40% of the energy we use, we import. And that's growing over time, our reliance on imports.
Yes.
That has an impact on us. And our solution to that is that we try and control how secure we feel with energy. Our control of how we get our energy is through largely interconnectors, imports and interconnectors. So I think about UK, we're really lucky, super lucky, and that we have very close neighbours who we're very friendly with, even though we might say it doesn't feel like it. I mean Europe.
Yes.
So we have a number of gas and electricity interconnectors.
And there are more coming.
And more coming.
Yes.
And this gives us the flexibility that means that we can perhaps as a country afford to, have policies that appear to pick winners, because whatever goes on in the UK, we can have interconnectors. The problem with interconnectors is if we have, I don't want to talk about, the worst case scenario, but we all know that
there's risks
the defence spending needs to increase across Europe because the threat of Russia is growing.
Yes.
So in that terrible situation in 5 years' time or 10 years' time, where that threat becomes a reality, a very easy thing from a kind of naval point of view is to cut interconnectors. They can do it. I was speaking to the CEO of one of those interconnector companies, and he said it can be done in 2 hours.
Wow.
So that's, and by the way, he wouldn't do a podcast with me. He said, I can't do a podcast with you because I don't want anybody to talk about it.
Yeah.
So, but that's how fast it can be done, So therefore, as a UK, we're like, okay, we're very lucky to have those relationships, but we know we're a bit exposed. So now let's look at some other countries. So
Yes.
Ireland, okay, it's our closest neighbour. Do you know what percentage of the power in Ireland is for data centres? Have a guess.
30%.
It's 25%.
25%. Oh, I was just lucky.
And it reached 25% in the last couple of years, and they've now got a moratorium to say no more data centres.
Oh, right.
Because, of course, it's pushing up the cost of energy for businesses and consumers. So,
and they would have had early investment, even 10, 20 years ago from Google and a lot of the big American tech companies. So what does that mean for us in the UK?
Well, I think what it means is that it is possible to attract data centre providers that we all want to do, but it will push up cost, and they do need these 5 nines of reliability, so 99.999% availability, which is, it's not just a few minutes per week. It's not much. So you have to think about then how you provide power to the data centers, which, by the way, will be a huge feature of Energy Exports Conference, is the power for the world's data centers will be featured heavily at Energy Exports Conference. So, okay, that's a very different story in Ireland, right? We have a very small, I think about 2% of our power is for data centers in Great Britain. Okay, so let's go to Italy.
Yeah.
Okay, Italy, 75% energy importer, net energy importer. So a huge net energy importer.
Yeah.
Almost totally reliant for their industry today on gas, much more reliant than we are in the UK.
Right.
So they have a much more gas price problem to their economy.
And where do they get their gas?
They import.
Yes.
So they have
from
almost
where?
no domestic oil and gas capability.
Yeah.
now.
Is that LNG though from Norway?
Yeah,
Russia,
and of course
US?
it's pipelines coming
Qatar.
down through, and of course Norway particularly, but they still get a bit of Russian gas.
Yeah.
So for them, what's their strategy? So they have, like the UK, an incredible oil and gas supply chain, and they're all exporters, like the UK, as we've now established. This is how companies are doing well. They're going to where the work is around the world. If it's not domestic, they have to go to where it is. But they're also another country that has to transition. And they know they need to transition away from gas. But they don't actually really have a solution yet, because they're, as a country, anti-nuclear. So that's interesting. We're now pro-nuclear.
We're pro-nuclear. All of a sudden,
I know. Their population is still anti-nuclear. So they have $150 billion worth of projects that are under review for across all energy sectors at the moment. And 70% of that is one technology. None of it is at FID yet. Floating offshore wind.
Okay, right, in the mid.
So about 100 billion of their 150 billion is assuming that floating offshore wind will provide them with the renewable power that they need to replace gas. But none are at FID.
Okay.
So we'll be talking about that at the Energy Exports
yeah.
Conference, and how do we get them to FID? And in the UK, we share that, right? We want floating offshore wind. Very difficult to get them to FID without heavy subsidies. Let's go to Japan. Japan is another really interesting market, another island nation, so like the UK. It's another industrial nation like the UK, but of course their energy base is more nuclear, less. So we're, us in Italy, more oil and gas.
Absolutely.
Exactly. So they're restarting a lot of their nuclear power stations now. After Fukushima disaster, which was 15 years ago,
Of course.
they are now slowly, carefully restarting nuclear power stations again. They have a heavy user of gas again, and they're a heavy user of coal, very heavy user of coal.
And we're supposed to be getting rid of that, but it's darn hard around the world, isn't it, in terms of,
There's
coal
more
power
oil and
capacity.
gas and coal being used around the world than ever before. So as much as we're still trying to move beyond this general principle of let's grow our primary energy from what is currently about 20% green power to more than that globally, it's still largely 80% hydrocarbon power, and it hasn't really changed. The world is growing, the economies are growing, data centers is one of those drivers of growth, electrification is a driver of growth. So what that means is that although renewables is growing fast, so are the hydrocarbon sectors as well, and coal, unfortunately, is still growing in some countries. So what's Japan planning to do? They're planning to co-fire ammonia with coal to try and reduce emissions of coal.
Oh, wow.
And so that means they need hydrogen, because they need to get the ammonia, they need hydrogen production first. So they might be the best hydrogen market, real market in the world.
Okay.
So we'll be talking about that at the Energy Exports Conference.
Right.
There aren't many markets right now that people are excited about in terms of hydrogen. Japan is a real one. So then talk about China. We will be
Can't
wanting
not talk about China.
So, well, most people don't talk about China. And an event like this, we actually haven't really featured China before, but we feel like we have to now bring it into the conversation.
Right.
They're obviously hugely leading in all renewable technologies. We totally rely upon those technologies because we import from China for almost everything we do anyway. So we're going to be trying to embrace that concept of let's understand China and look at where are the opportunities for collaboration. So we'll be doing that. Of course, when I was in Shanghai a couple of months ago, and it's incredible how quiet the roads are and yet how busy the roads are. So that's because almost all the cars now are EVs.
EVs, right.
But they're not Western EVs. There's the odd Tesla, but they're all Chinese-made EVs, and all companies I've never heard of. Dozens of different EV manufacturers that I've never heard of. And you know, we've reduced now the tariffs on Chinese EVs here in the UK.
Right.
So you're going to see a lot of Chinese, a lot of those brands I've never heard of, they're going to start turning up.
I love how we are encouraging the adoption of Chinese electric vehicles, but we don't want their floating wind turbines establishing a factory in the Highlands of Scotland. But, you know, I guess it just depends on what does risk mean.
I was in London earlier this week. Then I came back with that taxi driver who was very negative. and the bus I went on was a BYD bus, so electric bus, which is, of course, a Chinese company.
Yeah.
So I think learning how to work with China is a very important thing we want our members to understand, and we'll be talking about that.
Great.
Brazil is the next country I then want to talk about. It will also be at the EEC. An incredible market, already 80% renewable. And how are they doing that? Through hydropower. So they've had a long decades of amazing hydropower capability. But they're also the world's largest builder of new FPSOs. So 50% all the world's FPSOs are Petrobras. And they're building more and more, bigger and bigger FPSOs. That's a perfect match for the British supply chain. So we'll be talking about those projects there. But they're also incredibly strong in e-fuels and SAF because they have an amazing biomass capability, a feedstock capability to then produce, domestically produce, all the biomass technologies that, you know, so e-fuels, biofuels, and SAF, so sustainable aviation fuels, for the export markets around the world. And that's one of those amazing green markets where there is more demand than supply. There's feedstock shortages, but the airlines and the maritime industries all have regulations that are forcing them to now increase the blending of these green fuels into their existing fuels. And there's not enough feedstock. So that's an exciting market. It's actually an exciting market for the UK as well.
Well, when I was at the recent EIC conference in London,
Bankable Energies?
Bankable Energies.
There we go, yeah.
After Bankable Energies, we also had, it wasn't North Sea decarbonisation.
Oh, Energy 360.
Energy 360.
Yeah.
Thank you for reminding me. It was a fantastic conference.
There's a lot of events.
You know what? It was a fantastic conference, and what I loved about it was, you know, it was also bringing in, you know, some projects that, you know, aren't FID, but could really be back. And SAF was one of those. You know, there's a big, you know, SAF project in the northeast of England, potentially, you know, on its way. And so I was going to ask you, I mean, Brazil sounds really interesting. Biofuels, sustainable aviation fuel. What opportunities do you think, you know, the supply chain being in these export markets and growing in these export markets that can possibly bring those opportunities back onshore to the UK? Is that something that we can maybe look forward to?
Well, firstly, there are developers of greenfield projects in the UK. So I think, I mean, they're going to need some subsidy support to get going with their projects to get them to FID. So I think from a policy point of view, that's the priority here. But of course, our supply chain, as we've talked about, are established, brilliant, experienced exporters. And in Brazil, it's a kind of Sao Paulo, Rio base of where those projects are being developed domestically. So our supply chain's already there, and they're already working with those developers. As those projects come to life, our supply chain will be active in that. And if we don't route the supply chain here, then of course they might leave for good and just go to where these markets. But I'm not giving up on this. I still think there's amazing opportunity to develop real capabilities for the long term here in the UK, and our supply chain will start growing in the UK as well as around the world. And so I just wanted to also talk about a couple of other markets that show you how there are so many different things happening in the world right now. It's like there's opportunity for the supply chain everywhere. So Texas. Did you know Texas is the 8th biggest economy in the world? Just Texas.
Sure.
For the last 24 years, it's been the number one exporting state of the US. But it's also the number one developer of onshore wind, as well as the reason it's the number one exporting state is because of its oil and gas. So it's an incredible mix of all technologies. And of course, data centers, it's the real home for data centers. And so, you know, so we're going to bring that on, understand what's happening in the Texas market and try and understand opportunities there, because there's very strong heritage links between the US, particularly Texas and the UK. And the final market I want to talk about is a market I wouldn't have said a year ago we'd be able to talk about, which is Venezuela.
Of course, because the US intervention in Venezuela has reopened potentially their oil and gas market to the world. So if you've been to Venezuela, what is going on there?
I used to run a business in Venezuela.
Did you? You're such a dark horse, Stuart.
So I used to run a business in Iran as well.
Oh, well, see, we've got to talk.
This was pre-sanctioned.
Right, absolutely.
Pre-sanctioned. So,
Okay.
Because I wonder whether next year I'll be saying opportunities in Iran.
See.
It really feels like this is whatever you think of the Trump administration, he might open up that market and bring Iran back into the international trading fold, which I think would be a good thing. But not at the moment, but we'll see what comes. But right now, suddenly Venezuela is open for business. And so I used to run a business there until the Chavista movement basically nationalized all the industries about 15 years ago.
And that turfed out international
The
investors.
business I was running, which was at the time was a wood group business, was nationalized. Yeah,
Okay.
so it's great now to be. I'm planning to go back there maybe this year, hopefully if I can get in there this year, and establish opportunities for our supply chain there. And we're going to again showcase that at Energy Exports Conference. There's these new frontier markets. It used to be Guyana was the frontier market 2 years ago. Now it's Venezuela. Of course, Guyana, Suriname, still incredible markets. So there's just right now, coming right back to the beginning, to Energy Exports Conference, the job of this event is to showcase the different things happening around the world, but really it's around real projects. So we'll make sure people understand the changes in sort of geopolitics, the pressures around energy security, but ultimately it then becomes, so what does this all mean to where the real opportunities are? And I would say right now, okay, there are actually some interesting opportunities in the UK, but not enough to feed our hungry supply chain. So we've just got to bring all of this into Energy Exports Conference.
Well, Stuart Broadley, you have taken us around a romp around the world, and you are bringing the world once again to Aberdeen in September. We're really looking forward to it. Is there any other things that we need our audience to know ahead of September? Yes.
And we also, as well as Energy Exports Conference, that week, we're also doing an EEC Golf Day.
Excellent. Oh, I'm terrible at golf.
And a wonderful gala dinner as well, which will celebrate the energy industry. So absolutely. I think for those that are thinking, maybe I should go to Aberdeen, come for the week, explore the city, wonderful culture here, distilleries and so on, but ultimately then come and learn about the opportunities, and then come and network at a gala dinner, come and network at the golf event as well. Because ultimately, this energy industry is a small community of a few thousand people around the world who really are the movers and shakers. And builds friendships.
And they're going to be here. And one of the things that you've been talking about in our discussion is the importance of relationships still. You know, you're wearing through shoe leather because it's important to see people, talk to people still. I
agree. Yeah. And in this world of uncertainty, you know, where everybody feels a little bit like, what's AI going to do to my job? The energy industry is going to be one of those industries that powers through that. There's amazing job opportunities for people in this pure engineering, manufacturing, operational industry. It's a great industry to be in this time of uncertainty. So, and yet also we'll be really talking about data centers. So there's just so much to talk about. So as you can see, I love EEC. This is why it's my favorite show of the year, and I hope everybody comes.